The Galactic Council was the center power for 1,000 civilizations, an ancient forum of gleaming marble, crystalline arches, and corridors lined with banners of empires that spanned entire arms of the galaxy. It was here that disputes were settled, treaties signed, and the balance of power maintained among species too vast and proud to trust one another. Every species sent representatives, envoys, or servants to walk those corridors, and protocol demanded that they be treated with dignity. Or so it was said. In truth, dignity was reserved for the mighty. The weak were tolerated only so long as they knew their place. Humanity, newly risen from their cradle and still whispered about as reckless deathworlders, was tolerated in name, but rarely respected. The woman who approached the council gates that day drew little attention at first. She walked with calm poise, her steps unhurried, her eyes steady, her hands folded before her. To any observer she appeared unremarkable, merely another envoy among the many, a human draped in formal robes meant to convey diplomacy rather than strength. Yet there was something about her stillness, the faint weight in her bearing, that made the guards uneasy without knowing why. It was as though she carried with her a gravity not born of her size or rank, but a certainty that she belonged where she was going. At the great gate of the council's inner hall stood General Sarnak of the Imperial Guard, his silvered armor gleaming beneath the light of the twin suns that poured down upon the plaza. He had been given command of security for the day's session, a post of pride, for the council chamber would be filled with dignitaries, noble houses, and ministers. His orders were simple. Only those of recognized station, bearing proper insignias, would be permitted within. To him, the task was beneath his dignity. He had led fleets, crushed rebellions, and commanded legions. To stand at a gate and check seals like a common guard was an insult, but one he endured because it allowed him to bask in the sight of the council bowing to his emperor's will. When his eyes fell upon the woman, however, his lip curled in disdain. "A human," he muttered, more to himself than to his men, as though this place weren't already polluted enough. She stopped before him and inclined her head with calm courtesy. "I request entry," she said simply, her voice soft yet carried with clarity that reached the soldiers standing nearby. Sarnak sneered. "Request denied. Only authorized representatives are permitted." Her gaze did not falter. "I am here on official business." "Official business," he repeated with mocking emphasis. "And what business could a human have here? Selling trinkets? Begging favors? The council chamber is not for your kind. It is for rulers and warriors, for those who hold dominion over stars, not for a species still struggling to tame its own skies." A few of the guards chuckled at their commander's words, emboldened by his contempt. She regarded them with the same calm expression, her silence unnerving in a way they could not name. She did not argue, did not plead, did not shout. Instead, she simply stood, patient, as though waiting for reason to dawn upon them. Sarnak took her stillness for insolence. He stepped closer, towering above her, his voice rising so others in the plaza could hear. "You are far from your little planet, human, far from your death world storms and primitive wars. Here you have no power, no voice, no seat. You will turn and leave, or I will have you removed." For the first time she spoke with weight. "I advise against that." His brows furrowed, then amusement crossed his face. "You advise me?" he laughed, his armor plate shifting as he straightened to his full imposing height. "And why should I heed the advice of a fragile creature whose bones snap under gravity I endure with ease? Because my husband would not take it lightly." That stilled the laughter. Not silence it, but dulled it. A few of the soldiers glanced at one another. Sarnak raised an eyebrow, then leaned down with mocking curiosity. "Your husband?" he asked. "And who might this husband be? Another human, no doubt? A traitor? A pilot? A would-be officer playing at soldier?" She looked him directly in the eye, unflinching. "You do not want to know." He laughed again, this time louder, turning so the crowd could share in his amusement. "Do you hear her?" he called out. "The little human speaks, as though her mate were some great warlord, as though we should tremble before his name." He turned back to her, voice dripping with scorn. "No one trembles at the name of man. Not here, not in this galaxy. You are curiosities at best, Pests at worst. Whatever power your husband thinks he wields, it is dust compared to the Empire. Still she did not react. Her calm was absolute, her patience unbroken. It unsettled more than his words could. One of the clerks standing near the gate, a minor official of the council's record keepers, shifted uncomfortably. He had seen her face before, though memory clawed at him to recall where. He thought of sealed documents, restricted files, whispered warnings that came across his desk once and vanished before he could fully comprehend. His throat tightened, but he dared not intervene. To interrupt the general of the Empire was to invite ruin. The woman's voice, quiet but resonant, cut through the murmurs. The council summoned me. You bar not a petitioner, but one who has business within. Let me pass, General. Do not make me repeat myself. Sarnak's face hardened. His pride, already stoked, now burned with fury at her audacity. He gestured, and 2 soldiers stepped forward. Remove her. Gently if she complies. Less gently if she does not. The guards moved to obey, but as they reached for her arms, she simply turned her head and spoke again, low enough that only those closest could hear. Touch me, and my husband will know before your hands are withdrawn. He will not forgive you. The soldiers hesitated, caught by something in her tone. It was not threat, not bluster, but certainty. They looked to their commander. Sarnak snarled and shoved one forward, and the man reluctantly reached out. His hand hovered just above her shoulder before he drew back, inexplicably reluctant, as though a gulf wider than the void itself separated them. Sarnak roared at their hesitation, his pride wounded further still. Cowards, he barked. Do as I command. But the woman remained where she stood, unyielding, unafraid. The plaza grew quieter as more turned to watch. Delegates arriving for the session paused, sensing a tension that had no place in protocol. The council hall, accustomed to order and ceremony, now held the weight of something far more dangerous. She let the silence linger before speaking once more. You are making a mistake, General. The kind of mistake that echoes. The words struck harder than any raised voice could. Something in them rang with truth, a warning that chilled even those who did not yet understand why. Sarnak clenched his fist, but for all his fury there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He crushed it beneath pride. To admit fear was to surrender, and he was imperial. He would not yield to a human woman, no matter how composed she stood. She inclined her head once more, almost in pity. Then I will wait. The council chamber was a monument to order, built on the belief that every civilization could be contained within ritual and law. But order frayed easily when confronted with the unknown. When the first ripple of alarm passed through the fleet control towers orbiting the council's world, it spread like cracks across glass. A ship had arrived without warning, sliding from fold space in a manner no sense of grid had detected, a feat no approved drive was permitted to achieve. It was not registered in the council's database. Its design did not match any known military or civilian craft, and its presence caused every automated defense platform to stutter with confusion. The vessel loomed in orbit like a dark blade, unmarked by familiar symbols, its hull angled in a way that made scanners slip as though the ship resisted being known. Signals scrambled when they touched it. Probes returned fractured data. Yet one thing was undeniable. It was human. The engineers in the towers could tell by the patterns of construction, by the unique configuration of drives that whispered of Earth's laboratories and deathworld necessity. On the council floor below, whispers began almost instantly. Delegates glanced at each other, at the sudden reports flashing into their data feeds, at the fact that the newcomers had not requested permission to enter orbit, but had simply taken it. No species did that without consequence. None but the most confident would even dare. In the plaza outside the chamber, the human woman still waited, calm, her hands folded. Her stillness had become an anchor around which the growing crowd swirled in unease. Even Sarnak, who had mocked her only moments before, now shifted his weight as reports filtered to his calm. He dismissed them with a growl, unwilling to show doubt. But his soldiers exchanged nervous glances. The ship-broke atmosphere of the grace no alien engineer could have explained. It did not burn, it did not rumble, it did not disturb the shields of the port. It descended like a shadow, vast and quiet, until it set itself upon the landing tier reserved for council heads. Security protocols triggered automatically, but were overridden as though the ship had authority higher than theirs, though no one had granted it. When the ramp extended, silence fell across the tier. From the vessel stepped a single figure. He did not come flanked by guards or surrounded by aides. He walked alone. His stride was steady, measured, and though no insignia glittered upon his uniform, those who knew the shape of power recognized it instantly. Some of the delegates gasped, others whispered, and a few who had lived long enough to know true terror simply fell silent. Names passed between them in hushed tones, uncertain, incredulous, but circling the same conclusion. They had read reports, seen fragments of transmissions, heard rumors from the edge of space where wars had flared and ended before the Council could intervene. They had spoken of a human commander who turned desperation into victory, who crushed fleets with mathematics that should not have worked, who forced enemies stronger than Earth to sue for peace. His name was spoken rarely, often only in private, and always with unease. And now he was here. The general, still standing at the gate, narrowed his eyes. He saw only a man in human attire, a soldier perhaps, but not one who carried the weight of an empire. He saw no reason to fear. Yet when the man's eyes lifted and met his, Sarnak felt a pressure that no blade or weapon had ever imposed. It was not the look of a rival, nor the stare of one seeking dominance. It was colder than that. It was the gaze of someone who had already calculated the measure of the room and found no equal within it. The woman moved at last. She stepped forward to meet the man, her expression unchanged, her calm intact. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect between equals, not submission. He took her hand gently, asked no question, and together they turned toward the gate. Sarnak bristled. His pride could not yield. "You cannot pass," he declared, his voice raised so all might hear. "No matter who you are, no matter the ship you command, entry requires authorization. This chamber belongs to the Council, not to humanity." The man stopped, his hand still in his wife's. His head turned slowly, and his voice, when he spoke, carried without need for amplification. It was low, controlled, and sharper than any blade. "You denied her." The words were not a question, but an accusation. Sarnak stiffened. "I enforced the law." She bore no insignia. She offered no proof of her station. "I did my duty." The man's gaze did not shift, but the air itself seemed heavier. The soldiers behind the general adjusted their grips on their weapons without realizing it. "And when she warned you?" the man asked. "I do not take warnings from humans." Sarnak spat, but there was less confidence in his tone now, less laughter than before. The woman finally spoke, her voice the same steady calm it had always been. "I told him you would not take it lightly." The husband turned his eyes back to Sarnak. For a long moment he said nothing, and the silence spread until even the whispers of the delegates faded. Then he spoke again, and this time the weight in his words pressed into every listener. "You place your pride above wisdom. You insulted not me, but her. That is a debt no apology can settle." Whispers returned, sharper now. A clerk hurried into the chamber to confirm what many feared to say aloud. Reports spread faster than protocol could contain them. The husband's name was confirmed. Not rumor, not possibility. Truth. The supreme commander of the Terran Defense Accord. The strategist who had turned Earth's scattered fleets into the most efficient war machine of the modern age. The man who had broken the Creel Armada with forces a fraction their size, who had driven back the hegemony from systems they had ruled for centuries, who had forced the Veiled Dominion into the first peace treaty in their history. It was his hand that now rested gently upon his wife's. It was his eyes that fixed the general with a look colder than the void. Delegates shifted in their seats. Some stood, some considered leaving, but all knew the truth. If violence erupted here, no fleet the Council could muster would save them. Earth's ships had grown beyond their ability to predict, its weapons beyond their ability to replicate, its warriors beyond their ability to equal. They had dismissed humans as reckless deathworlders, but under his command, they had become something else entirely. Sarnak's armor suddenly felt heavier. The sneer faltered on his lips, though pride clung stubbornly. He tried to straighten, to regain the strength that had always carried him. "You think yourself above the Council?" he demanded. The commander did not smile. "The Council calls itself above war. yet it has never known one it could win, without others to bleed for it. Tell me, General, do you think yourself above consequence? The soldiers shifted again, unease flickering across their faces. The woman squeezed her husband's hand lightly, a subtle signal, and he inclined his head toward her. For a moment his expression softened, though only she could see it. Then he looked back at the general. "You will regret today," he said simply. The chamber held its silence like a living thing, heavy and breathless. The council's rituals of order had unraveled into stillness, for even the most practiced diplomat could not find words when standing in the shadow of the man they had spoken of only in whispers. The supreme commander of humanity stood at the gate, his wife beside him, and the galaxy's great powers realized they had made a mistake that could not be undone with words alone. The council speaker, an elder of the draft collective, rose from the dais. His frilled crest trembled though his voice attempted authority. He addressed the human, choosing his words with care. "Supreme Commander, the council was not informed of your visit. Protocols must be observed. If your envoy was delayed at the gate, it was surely a misunderstanding." The man's eyes never left the general. A misunderstanding would have ended when she spoke. This did not. The general tried to muster courage, but the gaze pinned him like an insect. Pride war with fear inside him, but he had lived too long on power to surrender without defiance. "You presume too much," he said, his voice sharper than before, but thinner. "You stand here as though you hold dominion over us all. Yet this chamber is the seat of civilization. You are one species among many. You will respect that." The commander's reply was calm, colder for its restraint. "Respect is earned, not demanded. And you chose insult, not respect." The woman at his side remained quiet, her serenity undisturbed. She had no need to speak. The weight of the moment belonged to him now, and he bore it with the same precision he carried into war. He stepped forward, the crowd parting without conscious thought, as though gravity itself bent away from him. "You denied her because you believed humans to be beneath you," he said to the general. "You mocked her because you thought her powerless. But she is my wife. That alone places her beyond your reach. You touched her dignity, and in doing so, you touched mine. Do you know what that means, General?" Sarnak opened his mouth, but no answer came. His voice faltered, caught between anger and realization. The council speaker interjected quickly, desperate to preserve order. "Surely we can resolve this without escalation. Commander, the council recognizes the offense. We will issue formal apology. Censure the general if required." The human turned his head slowly toward the dais. "An apology is nothing. An insult to her is not erased by words. Do you think humanity has bled across the stars to stand here begging for politeness? Do you think the wars we fought, the lives given, the victories won, were for the sake of empty gestures?" The speaker faltered. No reply came. The commander gestured with one hand, and the silence was broken not by words but by the sudden shut of the skies above. Every screen in the chamber lit at once as orbital feeds cascaded across the walls. Ships had arrived. They had not translated in one by one. They had not announced themselves. They had not waited for clearance. They had emerged from fold space simultaneously, surrounding the council world in a lattice of black steel. Terran warships, hundreds of them, sleek and silent, each one a weapon refined by desperation and perfected by victory. Gasps spread through the chamber. Some delegates rose in panic. Others fell back into their seats. Defense coordinators shouted into their comms, but the feeds showed the truth. Their fleets had been locked down, their platforms neutralized, their weapons dead. The Terran fleet had disabled them without firing a shot, a quiet demonstration that spoke louder than bombardment ever could. The general's face drained of color. His soldiers shifted uneasily, knowing the meaning of what they saw. The commander did not raise his voice. He did not need to. This is the power you dismissed. This is the force you mocked. You thought her words an empty warning. Now you see they were prophecy. The council speaker trembled visibly, his crest flattened in fear. "Supreme Commander, this is a sacred place. You would not dare." The human's eyes cut to him, and the elder froze in place. "Sacred? You call it sacred while you allow arrogance to fester at its gates? You call it sacred while you scorn those who bleed for its peace? My wife is sacred. Her honor is sacred. You dishonored her, and by extension dishonored me. That is what I will not dare allow." The weight of the words crushed the chamber. No one moved. No one spoke. All eyes turned to Sarnak, who now stood exposed, his pride stripped away, his rank meaningless before the judgment of a man who commanded not with titles, but with undeniable truth. The commander stepped closer, his boots echoing on the polished floor. Each step was deliberate, each one driving the general further into fear. At last he stood before him, not an inch of armor on his frame, yet greater than the towering soldier in steel. "Kneel," he said softly. The general blinked, stunned. "What?" "Kneel," the commander repeated. "Not to me, to her." The words spread like shock waves. Gasps erupted, murmurs rippled. No one knelt to a human, not in the council's history. But the weight of the order was undeniable. Sarnak's jaw clenched. His pride screamed against it. His body resisted, but the eyes upon him burned. The fleet above, the silence around him, the knowledge that his every move will be remembered by history. It crushed him. Slowly, trembling, he dropped to one knee before the woman he had mocked. His head bowed, his armor groaned, and shame burned hotter than any wound. The woman looked at him not with triumph, but with the same calm she had worn since the beginning. She inclined her head slightly, acknowledging, but not gloating. Her composure was mercy itself, and it was that mercy that cut deeper than the humiliation. The commander turned back to the council. "This is not vengeance. This is lesson. Humanity does not seek dominion. We do not hunger for conquest. But we will not be insulted. We will not be dismissed. And if you force our hand, the galaxy will learn too late that everything you thought of us was a shadow of the truth." The screens above still showed the Terran fleet, waiting, silent, a storm chained by nothing but his will. Every delegate saw it. Every soldier felt it. Every citizen across the planet who glimpsed the sky knew it. Earth did not ask for respect. Earth commanded it. At last a woman spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Husband." He turned and she met his eyes. "Let it be enough." For a moment the chamber held its breath. Then he inclined his head, the steel in his gaze softening for her alone. He raised his hand, and above the planet the Terran fleet shifted as one. Weapons powered down, drives dimmed, formations broke into patterns of withdrawal. The storm receded, not defeated but dismissed. He looked back at the council one final time. "Remember this. Humanity does not need you, but you need us. Never forget the price of arrogance." He took his wife's hand once more, and together they walked into the chamber as though nothing had happened, as though the galaxy itself had not just shifted upon its axis. Delegates parted before them in silence, fear and respect indistinguishable in their eyes. The council did not adjourn that day as planned. The chamber remained in uneasy session long after the Supreme Commander and his wife had taken their seats, for the weight of what had just occurred hung over every delegate like a storm cloud. What should have been a routine gathering of political debate had become something else entirely, a reckoning with humanity's place in the order of things. And no one present could deny that the balance had shifted. The speaker attempted to continue proceedings, but the usual rhythm of proposals and disputes was broken. Delegates could not focus on trade routes or border disputes when their skies still held the fading echoes of a human fleet. Every argument stumbled against the knowledge that, had the commander chosen otherwise, the council's world might now lie in ruins. The fear was not merely a destruction, but of irrelevance. Humanity had not conquered by force of arms that day, yet their strength had overshadowed every power in the room. The commander sat silent, speaking little, his wife beside him. He did not need to argue, for silence was enough. Every delegate who rose to speak found their voice faltering under his gaze. Every attempt to restore order fell hollow. The council's authority, so carefully curated over millennia, seemed suddenly fragile in the presence of one man who did not ask for permission to exist. At last, a delegate of the Zyros Syndicate rose, trembling but defiant. His species was ancient, proud, and known for their mastery of commerce. His frilled limbs twitched as he pointed toward the human envoy. "This display cannot stand without answer. If humanity believes it may intimidate this council into obedience, then it has already declared war upon our unity. We cannot bow to threats. His words carried strength, but his eyes betrayed fear. The commander finally stirred. He leaned forward, his voice calm but edged with steel. You call it threat, I call it truth. If you fear truth, that is your weakness, not mine. Humanity does not seek your obedience. We demand only respect. The delegate faltered, but pressed on. Respect is earned, not seized with force. The commander's eyes narrowed. You think it was force that held back our fleet today? Force would have left this planet burning. Force would have silenced you before you finish your sentence. What you saw was restraint. Restraint is earned, not given, and humanity has earned the right to choose when to show it. The chamber fell silent again. The lesson was clear. The fleet had been a warning, not an assault. That fact alone terrified more than destruction ever could. To face overwhelming power and survive only because its wielder chose mercy was a humiliation deeper than defeat. The woman spoke next, her voice softer but no less commanding. My husband did not come here to wage war. He came because I was summoned, and he came because you denied me. The insult was yours. The choice to escalate was yours. Humanity's presence here is not conquest. It is consequence. Her words rippled through the chamber like fire. Consequence. The delegates shifted uncomfortably because they knew she was right. The council had long treated humanity as an oddity, a young race from a dangerous world, amusing in its stubbornness but beneath serious consideration. That illusion had shattered. The galaxy now understood that to dismiss humans was to invite ruin. The general, still kneeling where he had been ordered, finally stirred. His voice was low, hoarse with shame. I did not know who you were. The commander looked down at him with cold detachment. Ignorance is not excuse. You judge not on knowledge, but on arrogance. That is the weakness of empires that believe themselves eternal. Sarnax's fists clenched against the floor. Pride still burned, but it was hollow, broken. He had been reduced before all to nothing more than an example, a warning carved into living memory. The council speaker, desperate to salvage authority, finally raised his voice. Then what would you have of us, Supreme Commander? Must we all kneel? Must we swear allegiance to Earth? The man shook his head. No, humanity does not need your allegiance, but you will remember this day. You will remember that Earth does not bend knee to your arrogance. You will treat my people with respect equal to any empire in this chamber. That is all we ask. That is all we require. But if you deny even that, then you will see what happens when humanity ceases to restrain itself. The words were not shouted, yet they echoed with finality. The speaker sank back, unable to answer. The council chamber, once the pinnacle of galactic pride, now felt like a courtroom in which all but two were on trial. In the days that followed, the shock reverberated across the galaxy. News spread faster than officials could contain. Worlds whispered of the human fleet that had appeared without warning, of the supreme commander who forced an imperial general to kneel, of the woman who stood calm at the heart of it all. Empires debated in secret. Military councils redrew their strategies. Merchants shifted their alliances. For the first time in living memory, the balance of power was uncertain. On Earth, the story was told with pride. Across colonies and stations, humans spoke of their commander with reverence, but greater still was the respect given to his wife, who had faced insult with calm unshaken. She became symbol as much as he would command her, proof that dignity need not shout to be unbreakable. Humanity's enemies saw her as dangerous not because she wielded armies, but because her presence alone could summon one. The council attempted to mend the fracture. They issued statement of respect, declared humanity recognized as equal among them, and quietly censured the general. Yet they could not erase what had been seen. They could not erase the image of their fleets rendered useless, their pride humbled, their chambers silent beneath the human gaze. For Sarnak, the humiliation never ended. Stripped of command, his name became curse among his peers, a reminder of arrogance punished. He swore vengeance in private, but the galaxy knew his pride was ashes. No empire would entrust him with power again. His story became warning told to young officers. Never underestimate humanity. Never mistake calm for weakness. Never let pride blind you to consequence. And as for the commander, he returned to his ship with his wife beside him, leaving the council to rebuild his pride in silence. He did not linger, for he had no need. His point had been made. His presence alone had rewritten the order of the stars. Humanity did not conquer the council that day. They did not need to. They had shown the galaxy that respect was not granted. It was taken, held, and defended. In the years that followed, no envoy of Earth was ever barred at any gate again. No delegate dared speak of humanity as lesser. The lesson had been written too deeply. It echoed in every treaty, in every negotiation, in every whispered warning between rulers who remembered the day the council trembled. The galaxy believed it understood humans after the day the commander humbled the council. They adjusted their diplomacy, redrew their strategies, and taught their cadets never to underestimate Earth. But time has a way of softening fear into memory, and memory into arrogance. Whispers grew among the younger empires that perhaps the event had been exaggerated. Perhaps the fleet had been less overwhelming than reported. The humiliation less severe. Pride, once cracked, began to mend, and with it returned the dangerous confidence that humans could be tested. It began with rumors. Outlying colonies of minor powers spoke of human trade routes blocked, of envoys delayed at borders. No war was declared, but obstacles appeared, subtle and deniable. Humanity, patient as ever, answered not with weapons but with warnings. Warnings were dismissed. The council, seeking to recover dignity, turned blind eye to such provocations, hoping the humans would restrain themselves once again. But restraint has limits. It was a commander's wife who first recognized a pattern. She saw that these provocations were not random but deliberate. Rival empires sought to test humanity's patience, believing that Earth's reputation relied only on that one infamous day. They thought if they could show humanity tolerating insult after insult, the galaxy would forget the fear. She told her husband this truth not as speculation but as certainty, and he listened. When the first human convoy was seized outright, its crew imprisoned under charges of trespassing on sovereign space, the illusion of restraint shattered. Earth sent envoys to the council demanding justice. The council stalled, argued, and delayed, unwilling to confront the power blocks responsible. They believed humanity would not risk open war for one convoy. They were wrong. The commander assembled his fleet, not the symbolic force that had once hung in silence above the council's world, but the full strength of Earth's armadas. They moved not in secrecy but in daylight, crossing borders with purpose, their transponders broadcasting openly. Humanity did not hide its response. It did not threaten from the shadows. It marched. The empire responsible for seizure, the Drevic Dominion, prepared its defenses, boasting of fleets unmatched in their region. They believed they could humble humanity in battle, show the galaxy that Earth's power was but myth. Their admirals spoke confidently of containment, of forcing concessions. Their soldiers cheered as propaganda promised glory. They had not listened to stories told in whispers, or perhaps they had chosen not to believe. The first clash came at the Dominion's border fortress. The Drevic launched their fleets in precise formation, confident in doctrine tested over centuries. Humanity did not match their formation. They did not fight as others fought. The battle was chaos to the Drevic, yet perfect to the humans. Where Drevic ships sought order, humans thrived in unpredictability. Where Drevic admirals relied on tradition, humans rewrote the rules with every maneuver. Within hours, the fortress was silent. Human forces pressed forward, seizing not only victory but initiative. The Dominion's fleets faltered, their admirals bewildered by tactics that seemed reckless yet always struck with precision. They realized too late what the Council had already learned. Humans did not fight like others. They adapted too quickly, pressed too relentlessly, and accepted no outcome but victory. News spread like wildfire. The galaxy watched as the Dominion, proud and unchallenged for generations, was driven back system by system. Entire sectors fell before humanity's advance, not because Earth sought conquest, but because they refused to tolerate insult without consequence. Humanity's message was the same as before, only louder. Respect was not optional. At the heart of it all was a commander, his wife ever beside him. She was not merely a symbol now, but a strategist in her own right, reading the political currents as he directed the battles. Together they embodied a unity that unsettled the galaxy, a leader and his partner, one wielding fleets, the other wielding wisdom, both unshakable. The council grew restless. Some members argued for intervention, others for appeasement, yet all remembered the sight of their chamber silenced by the commander's gaze, and none dare move openly against humanity. Instead, they waited, hoping the Dominion would succeed where they had failed. But the Dominion did not succeed. They collapsed. The end came not in a climactic battle, but in surrender. The Dominion, broken and humiliated, sent envoys to plead for peace. They offered apologies, reparations, even tribute. The commander's response was simple. Humanity does not require your tribute. We require your respect. If you cannot give it freely, then you will give it by consequence. The Dominion accepted, and their name joined the list of those who had learned the lesson too late. The galaxy trembled. This was no longer the story of one day at the council gates. This was a campaign, a demonstration that humanity's restraint was not weakness, but choice. And when that choice ended, no empire could stand against them. Among the younger races, whispers turned to awe. They spoke of Earth not as a rising power, but as a storm that reshaped the galaxy itself. Among the older empires, fear deepened. They realized that humanity was not content to be a footnote in history. They would write history with their own hands, and none could prevent it. Yet through it all, the commander and his wife remained unchanged. They did not seek crowns or thrones. They did not proclaim dominion over conquered worlds. They sought only to ensure that no human would ever again be dismissed, insulted, or denied dignity. Their war was not for conquest, but for respect. And that was what terrified the galaxy most. Conquerors could be predicted. Empires could be understood. But a people who sought not conquest but dignity, who would fight entire dominions not for wealth or territory, but for the principle of respect, were beyond comprehension. They could not be bargained with through bribes, nor deterred by threats of power, for they desired neither. They desired only what they already believed was theirs by right. The council finally convened an emergency session, debating humanity with desperation. Some argued to unite against Earth before it was too late. Others warned that such unity would collapse before the first battle, for who would trust allies who might abandon them? And all knew the truth. If humanity was provoked, no alliance would matter. Humanity would fight as only deathworlders could, and they would not stop until their point was made. In the end, the council chose silence. They issued no condemnations, passed no sanctions. They simply watched, powerless, as the galaxy shifted around them. For the second time in history, they had been reduced from rulers to spectators in their own chamber. And through it all, one story spread further than any other, of the woman once barred at the council's gate, whose presence now heralded fleets and whose dignity had reshaped the stars. To some she was myth, to others legend. But to humanity, she was simply who she had always been, a reminder that respect was not granted by power alone, but by standing unshaken in the face of arrogance.